It started with a single alteration to the guest registry at Windsor Castle, quiet, almost invisible. But within hours, senior courtiers were whispering about an unprecedented order allegedly backed by Princess Catherine herself. Queen Camilla, once expected to stand prominently beside the royal family at Prince George's Milestone celebration, had reportedly been removed from the final attendance plans, and according to insiders, the decision was anything but symbolic. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, palace officials attempted to dismiss the rumors as nothing more than another wave of exaggerated royal speculation. After all, Prince George's Milestone event had already become one of the most carefully orchestrated gatherings the monarchy had planned in years. Reports suggest preparations had been underway for months behind the guarded walls of Kensington Palace and Windsor Castle alike, involving detailed rehearsal schedules, revised ceremonial protocols, and tightly controlled media coordination. Yet something shifted dramatically in the final days leading up to the event. Long-approved guest arrangements were reportedly altered. Seating plans were quietly revised. Security clearances were updated with unusual urgency. And according to whispers emerging from palace administrative circles, one particular name appeared to trigger extraordinary internal tension: Camilla. Insiders claim aides working directly within the royal household were instructed to avoid discussing the queen consort's revised role entirely. Even among veteran staff, that level of silence reportedly felt deeply unusual. One former royal correspondent allegedly described the atmosphere as tense enough to stop conversations mid-sentence. Others familiar with palace operations suggested that courtiers were scrambling privately to contain growing confusion among guests who had expected Camilla to occupy a highly visible position beside King Charles and the Wales family during the celebration. But the reality unfolding behind closed doors appeared far more complicated than the palace was willing to admit publicly. At the center of the storm stood Catherine herself. Observers reportedly noticed an unmistakable change in her demeanor during a private Kensington Palace briefing held on just days before the event. Usually composed with the polished ease that has defined much of her public image, the Princess of Wales allegedly arrived with a colder, more deliberate presence. Sources close to royal staff whispered that Catherine appeared intensely focused, speaking very little but maintaining absolute control over discussions surrounding the event. And while no official confirmation emerged, insiders increasingly claimed that the future queen had personally approved the controversial adjustments now shaking palace circles. What made the situation even more explosive was the growing belief that Prince William fully supported her decision. For months, rumors had quietly circulated that tensions between different royal households were escalating beneath the surface, particularly regarding influence over George's future public role inside the monarchy. Some interpretations suggested William and Catherine had become increasingly protective of the environment surrounding their eldest son as King Charles's health struggles continued dominating palace life. Others believed older royal alliances were beginning to fracture under the pressure of an uncertain future. Whatever may be, insiders insist this latest development did not emerge overnight. They claim the disagreement had been building privately for far longer than the public realized. Meanwhile, outside palace walls, subtle signs of disruption were already beginning to attract attention. Media figures covering preparations for the Milestone celebration reportedly noticed Camilla's unexpected absence during several key rehearsal moments tied to the event. Royal photographers stationed near Windsor allegedly observed changes in arrival patterns among senior family members. Even commentators traditionally cautious about royal controversy began hinting that something felt off surrounding the palace's unusually controlled messaging. But as speculation intensified, official silence only deepened the mystery. And behind that silence, insiders say, an even larger struggle was quietly taking shape, one centered not simply on ceremony or appearance, but on the future direction of the monarchy itself. Because according to those whispering within the highest royal circles, this was never truly about a single event. It was about a growing battle over who would shape George's future inside the Monarchy itself. For years, Catherine was portrayed as the monarchy's calm mediator, the woman who soothed tensions while others fueled them. But reports now suggest the Princess of Wales has entered a new phase entirely. Protective, decisive, and increasingly unwilling to tolerate internal disruption around her children, especially when Prince George's future is concerned. What makes the alleged fallout surrounding George's Milestone event so significant is that it appears to reveal a version of Catherine the public has only rarely seen before. For more than a decade, she carefully cultivated the image of stability inside an institution often consumed by turbulence. While royal feuds exploded into headlines and family fractures dominated international coverage, Catherine remained measured, disciplined, and almost impossibly composed. Palace insiders frequently described her as the quiet bridge between generations, a calm presence capable of lowering tensions simply by refusing to participate in palace games. But according to growing whispers from within royal circles, something changed as pressures surrounding the future of the monarchy intensified. Reports suggest Catherine's prior it became dramatically sharper following King Charles's ongoing health struggles, particularly as Prince George's role within the royal institution started evolving more visibly. Those familiar with internal palace dynamics claim the Princess of Wales has become deeply focused on protecting the emotional stability of George, Charlotte, and Louis from what some insiders allegedly describe as royal factionalism. In other words, the very political undercurrents that shaped so much of William's own upbringing are reportedly the exact forces Catherine is now determined to keep away from her children. And insiders claim that determination has transformed her approach behind palace walls. For years, observers often compared Catherine to the late Queen Elizabeth II because of her patience and restraint. But more recently, different comparisons have begun surfacing among those close to royal operations. Some courtiers allegedly now see shades of Princess Anne in Catherine's evolving leadership style, a colder discipline beneath the warmth, a growing intolerance for instability, and a willingness to make difficult decisions without public explanation. One royal insider reportedly described it as a new steel entering the room. Another suggested Catherine has quietly shifted from supporting the monarchy to actively defending it. That shift, according to palace whispers, has become especially visible in the way William and Catherine now allegedly operate together. Far from the younger royal couple once expected to slowly wait their turn, insiders claim the Prince and Princess of Wales increasingly function as a united front preparing for the monarchy's next era in real time. Some within the palace have even privately referred to them as the future monarchy household, a center of growing influence, increasingly shaping royal priorities while Charles continues navigating the enormous physical and emotional strain surrounding his illness. And with that growing influence comes an equally growing sense of protectiveness around George. Because while the public still sees him largely as a young royal child smiling through carefully managed appearances, palace insiders claim George's preparation for future royal responsibility has already intensified significantly behind the scenes. Reports suggest discussions surrounding his education, public exposure, ceremonial training, and long-term role within the monarchy have become increasingly serious over the past year. Every decision now reportedly carries heavier weight. Every appearance is scrutinized more carefully. And according to some interpretations, Catherine has become fiercely protective over who gains proximity to George during this critical stage of his development. That is precisely why the alleged guest list controversy surrounding his Milestone event has triggered such explosive speculation within royal circles. Because to many insiders, this was never simply about ceremony, visibility, or public image. It reflected something much deeper, a mother drawing a line around the future king. And while palace officials continue attempting to maintain an appearance of unity, whispers surrounding Catherine's growing authority have only intensified in the aftermath of the controversy. Some claim she is becoming one of the most quietly powerful women the monarchy has seen in decades. Others believe her transformation signals a far larger shift already unfolding inside the House of Windsor itself. And according to palace whispers, one particular disagreement involving George allegedly pushed Catherine past the point of compromise. Different interpretations of the meeting vary wildly. Some describe it as tense but controlled. Others call it one of the most uncomfortable royal confrontations in years. But nearly every insider account agrees on one detail. Catherine refused to back down. By the time senior members of the royal household allegedly gathered to finalize arrangements for Prince George's Milestone event, tensions that had been quietly simmering for months were already dangerously close to erupting. According to palace whispers, what began as a routine internal discussion surrounding ceremonial roles quickly transformed into something far more personal, far more emotional, and far more politically explosive than anyone inside the palace expected. Because beneath the polished traditions, carefully measured statements, an outward image of royal unity, insiders claim an intense disagreement had been growing over who would ultimately hold influence around the young future king. Reports suggest the conflict centered heavily on Camilla's level of prominence during the event itself. Different interpretations of the dispute describe concerns over visibility, positioning, guest actions, and the symbolic message such arrangements would send both inside and outside the monarchy. Some insiders allegedly believed Camilla expected a more central role beside George during key ceremonial moments, particularly given her status as queen consort. Others close to Kensington Palace reportedly felt the event should remain tightly focused on the direct line of succession surrounding William, Catherine, and their children. And somewhere inside that widening divide, emotions allegedly hardened. Those familiar with the situation claim senior aides found themselves trapped in an increasingly impossible position. Staff connected to Clarence House reportedly pushed for maintaining traditional royal optics surrounding the king and queen consort, while advisors aligned more closely with Kensington Palace allegedly argued for a more controlled approach centered around George's future role within the monarchy. One insider described the atmosphere as walking through ice that could crack at any second. Another suggested even routine planning calls had become deeply strained as tensions escalated behind closed doors. At the center of it all stood Catherine, and according to nearly every account emerging from palace circles, she remained unshakably firm throughout the disagreement. Insiders claim the Princess of Wales made it unmistakably clear that decisions involving George would prioritize long-term stability over short-term optics. Reports suggest she viewed the matter not as a ceremonial dispute, but as part of a much larger effort to carefully shape the environment surrounding the future king. And when resistance allegedly emerged, Catherine reportedly did something palace insiders say she rarely does: she stopped compromising. That moment, according to some royal commentators, marked a dramatic turning point within the internal balance of the monarchy. Because while Catherine had long been viewed as diplomatic and accommodating, insiders now claim her position carried an entirely different weight once Prince William openly supported her stance. Reports suggest William stepped into discussions behind closed doors to reinforce the idea that George's future could not become entangled in competing household agendas or symbolic royal rivalries. And according to whispers from within the palace, that united front immediately shifted the entire dynamic after the confrontation. Meanwhile, King Charles allegedly found himself caught in an increasingly painful position. Sources claim the monarch attempted repeatedly to prevent the situation from escalating further, particularly given the emotional and physical strain already surrounding his ongoing health battles. Some insiders believe Charles hoped the disagreement could simply be softened quietly through compromise. But by that point, palace tensions had reportedly become too deep, too personal, and too emotionally charged to disappear behind polite royal smiles. Staff members allegedly described the atmosphere afterward as icy, with communication between certain royal offices becoming noticeably colder in the days that followed. What makes the entire situation even more remarkable is how strongly it echoes earlier periods of royal instability throughout modern monarchy history. Palace historians and commentators have quietly noted parallels to older succession anxieties, internal rivalries, and struggles over influence surrounding future heirs. Because within royal institutions, proximity has always meant power, access has always mattered, and those realities become even more dangerous. Ruse during periods of uncertainty surrounding the crown itself. But the deeper issue, insiders claim, wasn't merely ceremonial placement, it was the growing fear of competing royal power centers around the future king. Prince George may still be young, but palace insiders increasingly describe him as the monarchy's most protected figure, the living bridge between a fading royal era and the uncertain future beyond it. And according to whispers from inside the firm, Catherine intends to keep it that way at all costs. Behind the carefully controlled public appearances and polished royal traditions, reports suggest an extraordinary level of attention now surrounds nearly every aspect of George's life. Palace insiders claim the young prince is no longer viewed simply as William and Catherine's eldest child, but as the symbolic center of the monarchy's long-term survival strategy. In many ways, he represents continuity during one of the most emotionally uncertain periods the modern royal family has faced in decades. King Charles continues battling serious health concerns. Public confidence in the institution has fluctuated under years of scandal, division, and generational change. And some, masked, where in the middle of that uncertainty stands George, the future king, many insiders believe must be protected not only physically, but politically and emotionally as well. That belief, according to royal whispers, has increasingly shaped the way Catherine approaches motherhood inside the monarchy. Reports suggest the Princess of Wales has become intensely careful about controlling access to George, particularly as his visibility within royal life continues expanding. Every public appearance is allegedly weighed against long-term consequences. Every ceremonial role is reportedly discussed in detail behind palace walls. Some insiders claim Catherine has quietly built a tightly managed protective circle around George, Charlotte, and Louis I designed to shield them from the internal rivalries, emotional pressures, and competing influences that have historically damaged younger royals within the institution. And for many royal observers, that protectiveness is not difficult to understand. Prince William himself spent much of his childhood navigating an intensely public and emotionally turbulent royal environment. From the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage to years of media scandal, routiny, and internal palace conflict, William experienced firsthand what happens when royal children become trapped inside competing family power struggles. According to insiders, both William and Catherine are determined not to allow history to repeat itself with George. In fact, some palace commentators believe their entire parenting approach has been shaped by the lessons William learned growing up inside what one former royal aide allegedly described as a monarchy at war with itself. That is why the recent controversy surrounding George's Milestone event reportedly triggered such fierce emotions behind closed doors. Because to Catherine, insiders claim, the issue was never merely about ceremony or public optics. It was about maintaining control over the environment surrounding the future king during his most formative years. Reports suggest Catherine increasingly views outside influence around George as something requiring strict boundaries, especially as public fascination with him continues intensifying worldwide. Every smile, every appearance, every interaction now carries symbolic meaning. And according to whispers within royal circles, Catherine understands that reality maps more clearly than anyone else inside the palace. Some insiders even believe this growing divide reflects a deeper clash between two different visions of the monarchy itself. On one side stands William and Catherine's reportedly modernized, tightly controlled approach focused on stability, discipline, and long-term image management surrounding the direct line of succession. On the other side, some palace observers allegedly see remnants of an older royal structure still connected to Camilla's influence and long-established palace networks. While no official conflict has ever been acknowledged publicly, royal commentators quietly suggest that tensions between those worlds have become increasingly difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, George's role within the institution only continues growing larger. Reports suggest discussions surrounding his education, ceremonial training, and future responsibilities have intensified dramatically over the past year, particularly as uncertainty surrounding King Charles's health deepens. Some insiders even claim palace staff have begun treating certain aspects of George's preparation with an urgency usually reserved for much older heirs. And when Princess Anne emerged, at growing attention comes equally growing pressure not just on George himself, but on Catherine and William as the guardians shaping the future monarch behind the scenes. And while the palace attempted to project unity, insiders say the fallout from the guest list decision spread rapidly through royal circles. By the time final preparations for George's Milestone event were underway, one absence reportedly overshadowed every floral arrangement, rehearsal, and carefully staged photograph. Queen Camilla's reduced presence did not go unnoticed, and within palace corridors, whispers of humiliation began spreading fast. At first, the palace attempted to maintain the illusion that nothing unusual was happening. Official schedules remained deliberately vague. Public appearances continued with carefully measured smiles. Senior aides reportedly insisted that all arrangements surrounding Prince George's celebration were proceeding normally. But behind that polished exterior, insiders claim an unmistakable sense of tension had already consumed the atmosphere inside royal circles. Because by then, too many people had begun noticing the same thing. Camilla no longer appeared central to the eve. She was once expected to help lead. According to palace whispers, several planning sessions connected to the Milestone celebration moved forward without the level of involvement many royal observers had assumed the queen consort would naturally have. Reports suggest adjustments were quietly made to ceremonial positioning, rehearsal coordination, and even guest interaction schedules. While no official explanation was ever offered publicly, insiders claim the sudden shift triggered growing frustration among individuals connected to Clarence House. Some allegedly viewed the situation as an unmistakable public diminishing of Camilla's role within the evolving power structure of the monarchy. Others feared the optics alone could spark damaging speculation at a moment when the royal family could least afford instability. And speculation is exactly what followed. Royal commentators, media insiders, and longtime palace observers quickly began dissecting every available detail surrounding the event. Why had Camilla reportedly stepped back from visible preparations? Why were William and Catherine appearing increasingly dominant in all official narratives tied to George's future role? And, perhaps most importantly, why did palace officials seem so determined to avoid directly addressing the growing rumors at all? The silence itself became part of the controversy. Because within royal institutions, insiders say, silence often speaks louder than any statement ever could. Meanwhile, reports suggest Clarence House aides became increasingly alarmed over what they allegedly believed were strategic leaks emerging from within palace circles. According to whispers from royal staff, frustration grew behind the scenes as private tensions suddenly began surfacing publicly through carefully worded media speculation and anonymous insider commentary. Some insiders allegedly feared the monarchy was drifting dangerously close to a visible internal fracture precisely at the moment stability mattered most. Others believed the damage had already been done the instant questions surrounding Camilla's reduced role entered public conversation. Caught in the middle of the storm, according to several interpretations, was King Charles himself. Sources claim the monarch found the situation emotionally exhausting, torn between loyalty to his wife and recognition of William and Catherine's increa. Hassan emerged singly powerful position as the future of the crown. Those familiar with palace dynamics suggest Charles desperately hoped tensions could be softened quietly before they spiraled further. But the deeper the controversy spread, the harder it reportedly became to contain. Because this was no longer simply about a seating arrangement or ceremonial protocol. It had evolved into something symbolic, something emotional. And Catherine's camp, insiders claim, showed no intention of retreating. Reports suggest advisors surrounding the Prince and Princess of Wales believed their position reflected long-term institutional priorities rather than personal grievances. Some allegedly argued that protecting George's future required difficult boundaries, even when those boundaries created painful fallout within the family itself. That unwavering stance reportedly sent shockwaves through parts of the palace accustomed to compromise, diplomacy, and carefully hidden tensions. In response, the monarchy allegedly launched an aggressive effort to project unity publicly. Carefully staged appearances were scrutinized endlessly. Royal interactions were analyzed frame by commentators searching for S1 on GNS of strain. Body language experts flooded media discussions, fueling even more online speculation about growing divisions between royal households. Every glance, every smile, every physical distance between senior royals suddenly became part of a larger narrative the palace could no longer fully control. And the more officials attempted to calm the storm, the more fascinated the public seemed to become. But according to those familiar with the inner workings of the monarchy, this conflict may signal something far bigger than a family disagreement. What unfolded around George's Milestone event may ultimately be remembered not as a social slight, but as a declaration of the next royal era. Because insiders increasingly believe William and Catherine are no longer waiting quietly in the wings. They are already shaping the monarchy in real time. For years, the public perception surrounding William and Catherine centered on patience. They were seen as disciplined heirs carefully respecting hierarchy while preparing quietly for responsibilities that still appeared distant. But according to growing whispers from inside royal circles, that balance has shifted dramatically behind palace walls. King Charles's ongoing health struggles, combined with mounting pressure surrounding the monarchy's future stability, have reportedly accelerated an internal transition already unfolding long before the public fully recognized it. And now, many insiders believe George's Milestone celebration exposed that transformation more clearly than ever before. Reports suggest William and Catherine have steadily consolidated influence within the institution over the past several years, particularly regarding decisions tied to public image, media management, and long-term succession planning. Palace commentators increasingly describe Kensington Palace not merely as the home of the Prince and Princess of Wales, but as the operational center of the monarchy's future strategy. According to some insiders, even senior royal staff have begun adjusting their loyalties accordingly, recognizing that the next era of the crown may already be taking shape in real time rather than waiting for formal succession. That growing authority reportedly explains why the controversy surrounding Camilla's role became so emotionally charged within palace circles. Because to many observers, the situation symbolized family tension. It reflected a subtle but unmistakable redistribution of royal influence. Insiders claim William and Catherine are becoming far more intentional about controlling not only who gains proximity to George, but also how the future monarchy itself is publicly framed. Every appearance, every ceremony, every symbolic gesture now reportedly serves a larger purpose tied to long-term institutional survival. Some royal historians have quietly compared this approach to the late Queen Elizabeth II's style of monarchy management, not because Catherine mirrors Elizabeth personally, but because both reportedly understood the importance of discipline, distance, and strategic restraint inside an institution constantly vulnerable to instability. Reports suggest Catherine has become especially focused on maintaining a smaller, more tightly controlled royal environment around her children, one designed to minimize emotional chaos, competing agendas, and the kinds of public fractures that damaged previous generations of the royal family. And according to insiders, William fully shares that vision. At the same time, the monarchy itself appears to be evolving into something leaner, more carefully managed. Long gone are the days of sprawling royal visibility and loosely connected household influence operating freely around the institution. Palace whispers increasingly describe a modern royal structure centered around a concentrated core: William, Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis. In that environment, access becomes power, symbolism becomes strategy, and every decision tied to public positioning carries consequences far beyond ceremony alone. Charles's illness has only intensified that process. Reports suggest the king's condition has forced difficult internal conversations surrounding continuity, stability, and preparation for the future at a much faster pace than originally anticipated. While no official succession planning beyond normal constitutional procedures has ever been acknowledged publicly, insiders claim many operational aspects of the monarchy are already functioning with heightened awareness of the transition eventually approaching. That reality, according to palace sources, has placed enormous responsibility on William and Catherine long before either expected to fully carry it. And within that responsibility, Catherine's role appears increasingly central. No longer viewed simply as a supportive royal spouse, she is now often described by commentators as one of the monarchy's primary institutional protectors, particularly when it comes to safeguarding George's future legacy. Some insiders even believe the fierce response surrounding the guest list controversy revealed how far Catherine is willing to go when she believes the stability of the future crown is involved. Because in the end, this was never merely about one event, one disagreement, or one difficult family moment. It was about defining who will shape the monarchy's next chapter. And as the palace doors finally closed on George's milestone celebration, one truth reportedly lingered behind the royal smiles. The battle for the monarchy's future had already begun. The moment royal watchers noticed Camilla's apparent absence from key moments surrounding George's celebration, social media erupted into a storm of theories. Within hours, hashtags, body language breakdowns, and insider commentary transformed a private palace dispute into a global spectacle. What may have once remained buried behind palace walls suddenly became impossible to contain. Royal commentary. Commentators across television networks, digital platforms, and newspaper columns began dissecting every detail connected to the celebration with relentless intensity. A delayed arrival here, an unexpected seating arrangement there. Even routine interactions between senior royals were suddenly scrutinized as potential evidence of deeper fractures inside the House of Windsor. And as speculation accelerated online, the palace found itself confronting a dangerous reality modern monarchies understand all too well. Once a narrative escapes into the public sphere, controlling it becomes nearly impossible. Reports suggest social media users became particularly fixated on the perceived distance between Catherine and Camilla during appearances tied to the event. Clips lasting only seconds were replayed endlessly. Commentators debated facial expressions, posture, and brief exchanges, as though decoding hidden political messages. Some insiders allegedly found the frenzy deeply unsettling, especially given the sensitive internal tensions already surrounding George's growing role within the monarchy. Others quietly admitted the public fascination reflected something much larger than celebrity gossip. Beneath the viral headlines and online theories, people sensed they were witnessing a royal transition unfolding in real time. At the center of the conversation stood Catherine, and unexpectedly, much of the public reaction appeared to shift increasingly in her favor. Reports suggest many viewers interpreted her alleged actions not as hostility, but as protectiveness, a mother guarding her children from the emotional instability and palace rivalries that have haunted previous royal generations. Across social media, countless commentators drew comparisons between Catherine's carefully controlled parenting style and the turbulent royal environment that once surrounded William himself. In many ways, the public narrative began reframing the controversy entirely. No longer was it simply a question of royal protocol or family disagreement. It became a symbolic struggle between preservation and influence, between the future and the past. Meanwhile, tabloids reportedly found themselves divided over how aggressively to pursue the growing controversy. Some outlets allegedly leaned toward protecting King Charles from further emotional strain, particularly amid ongoing concerns surrounding Monarchy and his health. Others appeared far more willing to amplify whispers of palace division, knowing public fascination with royal conflict remains almost impossible to resist. Anonymous insider quotes multiplied rapidly. Royal experts offered conflicting interpretations daily, and each new theory only deepened the sense that something significant was unfolding behind closed doors, even if the full truth remained hidden beneath layers of palace silence. Comparisons to earlier royal fractures soon followed. Commentators began referencing moments from modern royal history when private tensions spilled publicly into view: the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage, the divisions surrounding Harry and Meghan's departure, even earlier generational conflicts stretching back decades within the monarchy itself. Because for all its grandeur and ceremony, the House of Windsor has often struggled most when family relationships become inseparable from institutional power. And according to some insiders, that exact danger now appeared to be resurfacing around George's future position inside the crown. Inside the palace itself, reports suggest growing frustration emerged over what some aides allege, and described as an uncontrollable leak culture surrounding royal affairs. Senior staff reportedly feared every internal disagreement was now capable of becoming global entertainment within hours. Some insiders even claimed trust between royal households had become noticeably strained, as speculation intensified over who might be quietly feeding details into the media ecosystem. The atmosphere, according to whispers from within palace circles, became increasingly paranoid, defensive, and emotionally exhausting for everyone involved. International media outlets quickly seized on the story as well, portraying the controversy not simply as royal gossip, but as evidence of a monarchy navigating generational transformation under enormous pressure. Across headlines worldwide, one theme appeared repeatedly. William and Catherine were no longer merely preparing for the future, they were beginning to define it. And whether intentional or not, George's Milestone event had suddenly become a symbol of that shifting balance of power. Yet behind all the headlines and speculation, insiders insist the true stakes reach far beyond one royal celebration. In royal history, the most consequential moment. ICNTs are rarely the loudest. Sometimes they arrive quietly through a missing invitation, a changed seating chart, or a single decision made behind closed palace doors. And according to whispers from within the firm, Catherine's alleged move against Camilla may one day be remembered as exactly that kind of moment. Because long after the headlines fade and the public speculation cools, insiders believe the true significance of George's Milestone celebration may lie in what it revealed about the monarchy's future direction. Beneath the polished smiles, carefully measured statements, and outward displays of royal unity, something deeper appears to be shifting inside the House of Windsor, not dramatically, not publicly, but slowly, deliberately, and perhaps permanently. And at the center of that transformation stand William and Catherine. For years, King Charles represented a monarchy caught between eras. His reign arrived carrying enormous historical weight, but also extraordinary personal challenges. Reports suggest his ongoing health struggles only intensified the sense that the institution had entered a period of fragile transition sooner than many expected. Some royal commentators note, quietly described Charles not as the architect of the monarchy's future, but as the bridge carrying it toward the next generation. A transitional king navigating one of the most emotionally complicated chapters the crown has faced in decades. And within that uncertainty, palace insiders claim William and Catherine have gradually stepped forward to provide the stability many believe the institution desperately needs. That reality, according to royal whispers, helps explain why Catherine's reported stance surrounding George's event carried such enormous symbolic power. To some observers, it was not simply an act of personal defiance or family tension. It was a declaration about priorities, about boundaries, about who will ultimately shape the environment surrounding the future king. Because insiders increasingly portray Catherine not merely as a future queen, but as the protector of George's eventual reign long before that reign officially begins. Every decision she allegedly makes now appears guided by one central objective: preserving the stability of the monarchy for the generation that comes after Charles. At the same time, many insiders believe Camilla's influence within the the institution may be quietly narrowing as the Wales family's authority continues expanding. That does not mean public humiliation or dramatic exile. The monarchy rarely operates through open confrontation. Instead, power inside royal institutions often changes through subtler mechanisms through visibility, access, influence, and symbolic positioning. And according to some palace commentators, George's Milestone celebration revealed exactly how much those internal balances may already be evolving behind the scenes. Meanwhile, William and Catherine appear increasingly focused on shaping a monarchy built around discipline, control, and carefully protected continuity. Reports suggest they are determined to avoid the emotional instability, public fractures, and competing royal agendas that damaged previous generations of the family. In many ways, the controversy surrounding George's celebration seemed to expose the emotional cost of that strategy, because preserving an institution as ancient and fragile as the crown often demands difficult choices, painful boundaries, and sacrifices that remain invisible to the public eye. And perhaps that is what makes this story resonate so powerfully for me. Beyond palace walls. At its heart, it is not simply about royal protocol or family disagreement. It is about legacy, about parents trying to protect their children from the pressures that once wounded them, about a monarchy struggling to survive inside a modern world that constantly threatens to expose every weakness. And above all, it is about the terrifying weight carried by those born into a system where personal relationships are never entirely personal, because every decision becomes part of history itself. As the palace attempted to restore calm following the controversy, one reality reportedly lingered quietly beneath every public appearance and every carefully managed royal photograph. The next chapter of the monarchy is already being written, not someday in the distant future, but now, in private meetings, in strategic decisions, in moments of silence that reveal more than words ever could. And according to those watching closely within royal circles, Catherine's reported refusal to compromise may ultimately be remembered as one of the clearest signals yet that the era of William and Catherine has already begun. Because within the House of Windsor, insiders say one lesso has always endured above all else. The crown may forgive many things, but it never forgets who tried to shape its future. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.